Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first transition webinar, What Should Be the Albany Presbytery's Vision and Mission Going Forward? My name is Kim Deal, Communication Manager for Albany Presbytery and organizer for today's meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. Please make every effort to reduce the outside noises that could be distracting for other people. You're currently muted, but if you could please turn off your cell phone, move away other things that could be disruptive, just things like that. We will have times when we are unmuting everyone so you can participate, and any background noises will be distracting. So if you could minimize that, that would be helpful. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's panelists by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You will send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these and address them during the question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. Can you go to the next slide, please? If you click to raise your hand, I will be notified and can help you direct your question to the panelists. We ask that you are patient with us. The software we're using today for this webinar is new to us too, and although we have been working to provide a seamless experience for you, we may run into a few glitches. Thank you for your patience and support. We are hoping that we will learn how to continue to leverage technology in ways that help provide more visibility and engagement throughout this transition process. We will be actively monitoring any kind of feedback that you guys provide to us over the next 2 days. You can send all feedback to me, communications@albanypresbytery.org, and then I will send them along to the panelists so that they can incorporate them into their work and get back to you. I would now like to introduce Shannon Banzo-Campo, Albany Presbytery Transitional Presbyter, to introduce this webinar. Shannon, can you confirm that?
Well, welcome everyone. We're very glad to have you joining us for today's webinar. Today we will be continuing our conversation about what is the mission and vision for the Presbytery, and we will be providing some opportunities for feedback and for Q&A. Today I'm joined by Jim Reisner from the Westminster Church, Linda Martin from the Broad Alban Church, and Michael Plank from the Pleasant Falls Church and from our CrossFit New Worshiping community, who will be sharing this webinar leadership with me today. To give you an idea of how we're going to be spending the next hour with each other, our goal is to finish by 1, no later than 1:05. We're going to begin with prayer. We've already done our introductions, and we are then going to go through slides. We have 3 sections to what we'd like to discuss with you today that will be led by the 3 different panelists, and we'll pause at the end of each of these sections for some moderated conversation. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll close with prayer. And a reminder that we will have feedback open for 48 hours after the webinar, so until 1 o'clock on Thursday, 2 days from now. And your feedback or questions that you may have afterwards, or for some of you who may be watching a recording who are not able to join us right at this particular time but will receive a recording later today, you can send your questions or your feedback to Kim, and she will, and that email address will be posted again at the end of this webinar. And then she will forward it to the appropriate person on this team, and all of that feedback will be collected and will be part of a document to be shared as we seek to be transparent during our transitional time. So Linda Martin is going to open us with prayer.
Let us pray. Holy God, we thank you for this time together and the technology that makes it possible. And we ask your presence. We commit this time to you. And we ask your presence that you would open our hearts and our minds and our ears and our voices, that we would listen for your leading in all of our discussions and broaden our understanding of what you are calling us to be as your church and as this presbytery. Again, be with us, we pray. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. So Jim Reisner is going to be leading this first section for us. So welcome, Jim.
Good to be here, and good to have a good number of people with us as we begin our work together and to look at our mission statement as we are beginning to have it come into shape. In the presentation we made at Presbytery, in the small groups that broke out and met, we presented a statement as well as a sort of a context statement. And for the moment, we're going to talk about that context statement, and particularly as we were looking at the image of a post-Christendom society. And so I'd like to focus on that for the moment. And this is slide 12. This is some material that came through the flipping task force that goes back a few years, and spoke of basically the movement of the church away from the center of society and more toward the fringe. The language here is the long era of the church's social and political status as a favored part of society from Constantine's edict in 313 AD through the 20th century. The Christian church in the West evolved from its biblical era reality as a countercultural mission of Jesus Christ in an indifferent or hostile world into an ally and even agent of the state. The church began to model its organization after secular political realities, empires and kingdoms, and in the 20th century North America, we also modeled ourselves after growing corporate structures. The Christian church's favor in the United States is evidenced in the insertion of under God in the Pledge of Allegiance in 1954. Since the 1960s, the church's favor in the United States has steadily eroded, and to the extent that today we see our current mission context as post-Christendom world. And then a definition in the next slide says a definition of post-Christendom. Mission in a post-Christendom world means that the church embraces its current situation of loss of favor in government and society, seeing this disestablishment not as a loss to be mourned, but as an opportunity to reclaim our New Testament heritage of following Jesus Christ in radical countercultural discipleship. The importance of context, I think, is something we really do need to keep in front of us. There's, I think, a lot of hand-wringing going on about why the church is, the Presbyterian Church USA is getting smaller, why our congregations are losing membership, and it's happening within a context. Churches sometimes fail to see that. They look for sort of, what aren't we doing right, and start blaming the folks in the circle. And it's really important to be able to see that the context and the climate has changed, and to be aware of that as we move forward. And I think it's helpful that we realize that the context in which we're doing is something that is difficult, and we have a difficult task in front of us. So I'll take the next slide. We want to sort of open this up for conversation, and this will be the first time we do this here, so I'm going to need some instruction. This is brand new for me, but I know that there was concern spoken at the Presbytery meeting about a comfort level with this term, because although we may be in the same time, our churches are located in different communities and in different places in the community. We have some folks who have churches on the village green. We have also congregations that are more out on the road. But the question is can we find that is there language that we have that actually does express the common situation that we find ourselves in? So what do we mean when we use the term post-Christendom? What does it mean for you? And does this help to understand the time we are in? And what are the blessings and challenges of being post-Christendom?
So we are going to open it up now for a few minutes. Might be a little shorter than 10 minutes, but a few minutes of some conversation about this. And Kim is going to unmute all of you at this.
Okay, Shannon, this is Kim. I just muted everyone again. So if somebody has a question or a comment they'd like to make, what you can do is raise your hand, and I should see that, and then I can manually go in and unmute you, which will help to make it so that the person who has the music going on won't be taking over everything.
Thank you, Kim.
I'm going to actually unmute Arthur. I'm going to put you on the spot, Arthur Fullerton, because I see you've put in a question. You are currently unmuted. Do you want to try to ask your question, Arthur?
Sure.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My question was, I don't like the deficit focus which post-Christendom implies. I prefer a more positive frame, such as field of missions.
Can you say a little more about that?
Sure. I think if we describe ourselves in a negative way as post-Christendom, we're saying that not only has the world changed, but we accept that we live in a post-Christendom time, and I don't accept that frame. I think we have a great mission opportunity here, and I think we need to recognize that mission can be just as relevant here in Albany Presbytery as it is any other place in the world.
Great. Michael wanted to respond to that. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think the intent is certainly to have post-Christendom be a contextualizing statement that describes the context in which the church finds itself, not one that describes the power or relevance of the church. And our intention in doing that is to be able to kind of face the facts of our existence right now, which is that the church does not have and enjoy the same kind of privilege that it did, say, 40 or 50 years ago, but is in a starkly different context than it was at that time.
Also,
Sure,
go ahead.
Yeah, I just know that, for example, I grew up in Arkansas, and our Catholic brethren refer to their Catholic churches in Arkansas and places like that as being out in the missions and being in the mission field, because they didn't have the dominance in the local culture that they had in other areas of the country. So I think we can adopt some of their language as a better way to frame it, instead of saying that we're post-Christendom. That's my only.
And Jim, you had something you wanted to say?
Well, just that I think that we want to embrace where we are now, for the mere fact that if we shouldn't be embracing where we're not. I don't look at the term as a negative one. I look at it as a descriptive one that perhaps is a better place for the church to be. It may be better that, and we may be actually to affect more change. We may be able to live more vitally as communities if we are not so burdened with this identification as being at the center. But your point, I want to acknowledge that we need to find language that is positive here, and not just say something that we are no longer, and so to find language that describes that as good. Post-Christendom is a fairly widely used term and has been in operation, at least in terms of people's reflections, going back, I would say back into the 1980s with some of the work that Albany did on using the images of Constantinople and the catacombs, and that the church needed for to reach out and to become a more apostolic in its approach to the community, rather than being a place considering itself at the center where the assumption is that people will just come if you open the doors.
Are there other questions that we'd like to address? Anyone else who'd like to raise their hand?
Kara.
Great, Kara, go ahead.
My concern is that post-Christendom is a term that we have to explain. And if we have to explain it to people, I think we have to consider how widely we are going to disseminate this discussion. I think the professionals in the church understand it completely. I think those of us who are not professionals may not understand it as well. And so I am concerned about the use of the term because we have to define it such.
Do you have any alternatives in mind?
No, which is not helpful. I recognize. But you know, I grew up in a family, as many of you know, that was atheist. I grew up as a minority in the 1950s when everyone around me went to church, and where I was told in my kindergarten class because I didn't go to Sunday school I was going to go to hell. Now I find myself as a Christian and an active Christian in a similar situation, which is, I find fascinating that this has occurred over the years of my lifetime. No, I don't have an alternative term, and I will think about that. But I think I agree with Arthur. I think we need something that says where we're at, that we are now a minority, particularly those of us who are in the mainline denominations. And we have a mission, and I think many of us accept that mission, that we now have great work to do. So, you know, I don't have a term, I'm sorry. That isn't very helpful, but.
So I understand you're saying that having something to describe our context would be helpful, but your concern is that we need to avoid language perhaps as jargon or understood by a few.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. And this is Shannon. I think some of what the team is trying to do in this is this will be language as a descriptor. This is internal about how we know ourselves. It's really an internal educational piece for the presbytery about the current reality and where we find ourselves. We may use different language to describe it, but the reality remains that we don't enjoy that privileged center any longer. And then how do we see ourselves on the mission field in that, and how do we then describe our work and our context? We're considering this as a sort of internal educational type of language as well. So we need to move on. Michael has one more thing, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
Yeah,
I have
I'm sorry.
a question, actually, if I could.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Denise Gibson, Malta Presbyterian Church.
Denise,
My question,
Denise, go ahead, Denise. I was just going to say we need to maybe spend 5 more minutes in this area, but then just to give you an idea of where we are on time.
my question's very brief. My question is there anyone who doesn't believe that we are in a post-Christendom period? Because if everyone is in agreement that that's where we're at, then we're spending a lot of time talking about something that's not transitional.
Yeah, we raised it again on the webinar, Denise, because it was the 3 breakout groups that we had at the Presbytery meeting about 3 weeks ago. We got a lot of feedback on this area, so we wanted to raise it again for some additional feedback. Linda, did you want to say something?
Well, and just some of the feedback in smaller, more rural churches was that it didn't seem Christians didn't seem to be part of the activity because they were still the sense of that community. So I guess that was part of the discussion, and how is it true for all, and educating us that it's really there even if we're not particularly feeling it in certain areas, but kind of as a way to be prepared.
Great. If there's other questions about this, please feel free to send them in as part of your feedback, because we want to move on with the next 2 areas of the webinar, but we're really glad for these questions and this feedback. And if I got muted, I'm very sorry. What I wanted to say, I'll start again, is that thank you for everyone for your feedback in this particular area of conversation, and we're going to keep integrating that as we move forward. We're very appreciative of that. If you have additional feedback, please do send it to Kim, and we'll keep responding.
As we move ahead, we just want to keep this in front of us as we talk about the new mission statement, is that to have the current mission statement also in front of us. A question came up in the small group that I was part of at Presbytery, is anyone knew what the old mission statement was. And yes, there were people in the room who could do that. The trick about mission statements is that so often they get completed and then they get stuck on the wall somewhere, maybe behind a coat rack, and they really do not become the active framework by which we do our mission together. So we really do want to have a living, breathing statement that is at work among us, that becomes a guideline for our work together. The old statement read, led by the Holy Spirit, Albany Presbytery encourages, challenges, and equips its members and congregations to thrive as disciples of Jesus Christ, with the goals as congregational vitality, mission living, healthy relationships.
Yeah, and so this is Michael now. Another part of this conversation has been looking at something that is kind of pithy and quippy that we could just rattle off, like Stony Point, you see, is called, has their motto as being an open space, and Westminster says woven together, something that could go on a logo or a website that's memorable and kind of easily captures what we're talking about. And that may be something that we want to do, and that's a great thing to have, but that is a little bit different than the mission statement. The mission statement is going to be a document that will serve more as like a blueprint and a structure that can be directional in nature, so that we can go back to it again and again when we're making decisions and making sort of financial plans, and we can hold those things up to our mission statement. From there, we may want to draw a couple of words that we can use in a motto like this, but that will be a slightly different project than coming up with a mission statement. And so the draft of our vision statement, I'll read in case any of you are on the phone, says, "We are a community of faith united in the love of Jesus Christ, committed to the feeding of the least of these in body, mind, and spirit. We seek to nurture and support our worshiping communities and their leaders. We believe in God's power to transform individuals and communities into the new life in Jesus Christ. And we commit ourselves to ministries that feed all of God's people and proclaim the love and justice of our Lord Jesus Christ." The context we've talked about a little bit already. I mean, our mission field, of course, is the Capital Region and regions beyond that in the Mohawk and Hudson River valleys. And there are obviously various contextual consequences of being in those areas and being in this area where the church does not enjoy the same privilege it once did, but we've, of course, already explored that a little bit.
This is Jim again, and I'll take this slide right here. I'm going to take it because I sort of created the sort of the controversy around it as it was expressed in the small group at Presbyteries. And what we have here I do not think is sufficient, and we need to work on sort of how we're going to describe ourselves as our region. Something that that I notice about this region beyond its natural beauty, and there's plenty of it. As a Jersey boy, I am caught up with the terrain. The Ice Age did not get down to Philadelphia, so I lived on a flat area with a few little hills here and there, and I worked in cities that I couldn't look out and see in the distance a landscape. And one of the great things about Albany, the city, as I'm concerned, where I live and work, is that I can look to the east and see the Taconics, and I can look to the south and see the Catskills. I can look to the north and see the Adirondacks and the escarpment to the west. And but what I really see also are the rivers and the water. The image that comes to my mind is a river runs through it. That when I worked on the AC for Stillwater, driving up along the Hudson was such a treat. I just enjoyed so much just taking in the power of the river, and I had a much greater sense of how the river really does have such a remarkable imprint on our region. Another thing is that we live in a world where water is such a great issue, and we're seeing that with Hoosick Falls, but we're also seeing it in many places in the world, California, but other places where drought is such a major issue. The water is also our blessing. So these are just a few thoughts. I'm not sure but the language that we had in terms of the Hudson and Mohawk valleys, people were feeling excluded by that. I think most of us are within the watershed of the two rivers, but not all of us. And how might we describe our region? Where is it that we live? What language can we borrow to talk about our common mission field? And I think at that point I'll pause and we'll move on to another question and answer time on the mission statement and also from what you've heard from our last Q&A about our mission statement, and so let's open it up for questions.
Okay, so this is Kim, and it's been a little bit challenging managing when we get too many people on unmuted. Things start getting a little bit hard to hear. So if you have a specific comment you'd like to make, I'd like to try to unmute people one at a time, or just a few people at a time, to get you started. I know that Jerry, you had I'm trying to find you on here. Actually, you had a pretty lengthy comment, and I'm going to actually unmute you right now. You should be unmuted, and you can share your comment. Jerry?
Yes, I'm here.
Well, I can also read what he wrote. He said, what is, quote, wrong with the current mission statement, In other words, why do we need to change it? The current mission statement is simple and fairly clear. The proposed statement is much wordier and I think says less. I think the statement of the context is very helpful and would be an excellent educational discussion tool that would enhance the work outlined in our current mission statement. We may want to change the goals or not, but I'm not sure we need to change the actual mission statement.
Michael.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
So my answer to that would be that I think the reason to change the mission statement is that the current mission statement has probably taken us about as far as it can take us. And I think there's room for conversation about the proposed new statement, but I think that I think that the current one has gotten as far as it will get.
Can you tell me why you think that?
Can you speak a little louder, Jerry?
Can you tell me why you think that?
That's good.
Personally, I think that because we have reached this time in the life of the Presbytery where we have decided that it is a priority to engage in transitional work, and transitional work, I think, necessitates some sort of step in not necessarily a new direction, but a refreshed and clarified direction.
That wasn't helpful, but thank you.
Jerry, this is Jim. I'm hesitant to criticize other mission statements being involved in this, putting this one together. So I really don't have criticism of the last one. But I will say that it was put together at a different time, and the mere process of examining ourselves and our common work together. A mission statement is more than just words in paper. It is mutual commitment. It is the exchange of ideas and the prioritization of common concerns. And so the process has value. I'm not sure that the document may not end up being any better, but the process that we go through builds community, and it also builds common commitment. So perhaps I won't say that we may come up with a better document, but I think the process that we go through will bring us to our present time and our present shared concerns and challenges, and what we produce through this process may be of greater value than anything else, anything we put on paper.
Linda has something to say.
Well, I was just thinking about all the Holy Cow landscape survey and the conversations that we've had. The church's input has been always coming up so many with missions on feeding, and that became kind of a theme. And so it was thinking about how do we put that into feeding, not just in body but in spirit. But that seemed to be a commonality as we're looking at transitioning together.
Are there other questions in the queue?
Yes, there are other questions in the queue. I think that, is it Laura Mitchell, did you have one that you wanted to? If you could speak loudly, we're having a hard time getting the question in.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I was hoping that maybe you could read aloud the old mission statement. I have to admit my ignorance that I do not recall it, and I would have thought maybe it would have been interesting to have the two side by side to compare them.
Okay. What I'm doing is I'm going back to that slide right now. It should be on your screen. It reads, led by the Holy Spirit, Albany Presbytery encourages, challenges, and equips its members and congregations to thrive as disciples of Jesus Christ. And then it listed 3 goals: congregational vitality, missional living, and healthy relationships. And This was to take us through about 2012. This came out of the flipping work of the Presbytery. So that remains what we currently have. And then what our draft is, again, this will be shortened down into a shorter motto type of a statement because the previous statement has those 3 short taglines. But here we have a statement of who we are, and then we also have a statement of context.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does. I mean, I do agree that it's all good. It's just very long, and hopefully we can get it shortened up so it could be something that comes quickly to our memories to, you know, encourage us to use it rather than hide it someplace. Okay, that's all.
Right. I would say that's our goal, is to get a shorter statement that is memorable. That might be in sort of the motto category, such as our previous statement has those 3: congregational vitality, healthy relationships, missional living. That's almost like a motto. But then there was language in the documents from flipping around each of those that was longer, explaining what each of those pieces meant. And so that's what we see as the longer document, is almost in parliamentary language as a rationale for why it is that we have these as our goals and as our mission plan. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Okay.
So
I think we have time for one more question on this section, and then we'll move on to the third section.
So Shannon, this is Kim. There's quite a few comments that are coming in, and I don't know how much time you want to take this in the webinar versus offline. Bonnie Orth is currently unmuted, I believe. And Bonnie, did you want to jump in here? Bonnie, can you speak? You had said you wanted to be unmuted, and you're unmuted right now. Can you talk? Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read a couple of the comments here, and if Bonnie comes on, she can maybe interrupt me. But Terry Diggory suggested that we should be sure to acknowledge diversity as well as unity. We're having, and for many of you, just so you know, I'm getting a lot of comments in here. We are going to be feeding these back to the panelists, so your comments will not get lost. Let's see. I think that I'm trying to go through these comments here and see which ones would be. They're all great comments. If anybody else wants to be unmuted, I can also unmute them as well. Lois Hesberg says that she agrees with all the parties and the people who have been talking. The need to refine if our mission has indeed changed is essential, but a mission statement should be concise, not wordy, and the proposal is redundant as well.
Great. And as I said, we want to get to one shorter piece out of this. This longer piece that we have will really be the rationale for the shorter statement that will come out of it. I think, Kim, in the interest of time, we need to move on to the final section, but we will address any other feedback, and we really want to hear as much feedback as possible as we continue to refine this longer statement. So that would be very helpful.
You know, Shannon, that's great. I just want to, because I know Bonnie was actively trying to get in, she just sent me a note, and she just says, I have a problem with the phrase, the least of these, because it can sound condescending to those who might not know us. I get it, but I worry that others might not.
This is Jim. We've heard that from a variety of folks, and I think everyone is pretty much in agreement that this is something that, if you know Matthew 25, you know what it's talking about, but for a lot of folks who don't have that immediate, don't have that connection, that it does come off as perhaps condescending, and that we will need to find new language to talk about the confluence of interest that is within the Presbytery about feeding ministries, and if we are going to use that language, we need to do so with terms that do not suggest looking down on people. Thank you for that, Bonnie.
Great. We're going to move on to our last section, which is going to be led by Linda Martin.
Well, you'll see before you the landscape future priorities. That came out of the Holy Cow landscape and the discussion groups that were around that. And for those of you that might not be able to see it on your screen, I will read through that. The number one, and they are ranked, the number one was equip congregations to be more effective in addressing problems affecting their surrounding communities. That was a desire of many, that for the Presbytery to give help in that way. The second priority was to cultivate a higher level of trust within the Presbytery, and that discussions around the issue of trust were heard in, I think, all of the groups. The third priority was to equip pastors and other leaders in congregations with strategies that enable them to reach new members, wanting to give that pastoral and leadership help. The fourth priority was to take a leadership role in churches that are struggling, asking the Presbytery to be more active in that process. And number five was to equip pastors and other leaders in congregations to help members become growing, vital disciples. So there's a lot about resourcing that came in as priorities on that landscaping, and we're trying to keep all of that information around us in our discussions as we looked at as in this transitional process. So part of that then led us to looking at, because of financial realities and what our mission focus should be, into looking at our mission partners. And you will see there on the slide that CRTC, the Capital Region Theological Center, in our discussions, that's really not the same as a mission partner, but more an ecumenical partner and a resourcing partner for education. So the thinking is that that should be set aside in its own category. Then we look at that we are involved with 3 campus ministries that we have historically supported at Sage and Union and SUNY. And then some of our mission partners, TOUM, SICM, and the Rural Migrant Ministries were part of the discussion. Also, denominational, what we're giving towards the Synod and the Presbyterian Mission Agency. And in our discussions at our small groups, at the April Presbytery meeting, we had the questions of the groups on these areas of what we do with our mission partnerships. And one was, which of these ministries interacts with the life of your congregation? The second one was, do you feel that the primary role for the Presbytery is in mission funding? And the third one, are there particular ministries of the Synod of the Northeast or the Presbyterian Mission Agency that interact with the life of your congregation? So some of that feedback then around that discussion that we heard was, first of all, many of the congregations in the groups do not have a direct connection to our current mission partners. And some have monetary connections, but no hands-on connection. Some have both. Most mission partners are Capital District centric, thus leaving out much of the Presbytery. So there was discussion around, how do we determine which groups we're going to partner with, and there are many very good groups around the areas that are not necessarily located in the Capital District. So there was discussion about that part. And there was discussion with the Synod that not all congregations are connected to this mission, but they recognize the support that they are providing the Presbytery, and we have been learning more and more about the many ways that the Synod offers support to us. And then there's the denominational giving. We were talking about how we give as a whole. Our monies go undesignated. Should we designate to specific ministries or missions that the Presbyterian Mission Agency is involved in? So that is some of the discussions that we had, looking at also the realization that in our feedback the realization that our percentage of giving to our mission partners is at about 22% and has not changed for a very long time, even though our budget and areas have decreased. There's not been any decrease in that. Some of the discussion too was that, you know, that we have been in conversation with our mission partners for years now, alerting them to the fact that things are probably going to need to change. What's that going to look like? You know, one of the questions is, should we think about it as, you know, dropping that to a 10 to 15% tithe or something on that effect? Should we, again, match our giving to the Presbyterian Missions Agency more directly in line with our current mission giving throughout our interests throughout our presbytery? Looking at the possibility too, which these are all hard questions, but things that we really need to look at. Should we lessen our current mission partners over a 2-year period of time, recognizing that this cannot be done overnight, that this is a gradual process? And mission giving, it's been brought up at each presbytery meeting, bringing something up at that meeting that the local congregation that is hosting, something that they are doing, and maybe taking up an offering to go towards that particular mission project. And that would be a way of all of us supporting together. And campus ministry, there was a lot of unclear feedback about that. To be involved, and many that I heard said, yes, it's important. Others, you know, we're wondering, how do we make this, should it be the churches that are more surrounding that particular ministry, but also the realization that kids come from all over and that this is a mission field for us. I think some of our discussion was around how do we get one another throughout all of our churches to come together to share what we're doing in missions so that we can join in on that and not be all of us always be reinventing the wheel, so to speak. That someone might have this great mission project going that we can just become a part of, whether that's just financial support or actually coming together in shared, you know, physical support of that mission. So that was some of the feedback that we had on around these discussions on our mission partners. And I think now we'll open it for questions and answers on this section of our presentation.
So this is Kim, and I just want to do a couple of housekeeping things. We just for everyone, so everyone knows, we have about we've had about 25 attendees on today, and there has been a tremendous amount of engagement in the webinar, and I want to thank everybody. I hope that people are not feeling frustrated. I am going to, anybody who we were not able to address so far or get to, I will be forwarding your feedback on to the panelists. In the meantime, if you have any questions that you want to try to get in right now at this pause, please, we'll try to raise hands, and I will try to unmute you and try to see how we can get you engaged with the panelists. So if you have that opportunity to either send me a question or raise your hand, I'm watching right now, and I will try to get you connected with our panelists. Does anyone have anything specific they'd like to bring up at this time? In addition to, many of you have been sending comments. Now would be an opportunity for you to talk about them. Okay, Denise Gibson, I'm going to unmute you. You're currently unmuted. Okay, so excellent.
Just a quick question. What if, as you were going over those different missions and all those difficult questions and conversations that need to be had, what if we, looking at each of those missions, looked at the receiver, not the person who is actually heading that mission, not their mission field, but who their target is? What is that person actually receiving, and is that a mission we want to support? So the campus ministries, what is that student receiving? How is that student helped to actually go out and maybe give back to the church, maybe help with homework helpers or something like that?
Great, thanks, Denise. Who would like to respond, Linda?
Oh, I think that's good to be thinking about too, and I think I failed to mention the one point that we had the discussion, should the Presbytery be a mission funding entity or a mission resourcing to encourage all of the local churches to be involved in mission. But this idea of, you know, looking at, right, who are receiving the benefits of that that mission. But again, I think it still goes back to the question, is that for the local congregations to embrace, or is that the presbytery as a whole responsibility? I think that's where we're trying to make decisions on.
Okay. Does that help, Denise?
Yes, that is very helpful. But then I go back to like Sage, where I did go to school, and I did actually attend some of the meetings that were there for the Christian students, and it seemed like we went there, we were taught that, but there weren't a lot of opportunities for us to get involved with the local church, get involved with the community, and so there wasn't a lot of repeat attendance, there wasn't a lot of consistency.
Great, that's really helpful feedback, Denise, thank you. Kim, are there any other questions? I think we could probably take 2 more, given our time.
Absolutely. I just unmuted Tom Gregg. Tom, you should be able to talk now.
Hello?
Yes.
We can hear you, Tom.
You can hear me? Yeah, my question, Rural Migrant Ministries. I'm not sure if we understand, or do we really think it connects with specific congregations in our presbytery, or it at least seems to me to be a mission that Cass helped get us involved in, so that we were doing things in mission outside, you know, the capital, the center area, the cities. But I thought during that time, as we worked with them, we found out that really our farmers in Albany Presbytery aren't really using rural migrants. They might have most of their laborers do not come and go the way Rural Migrant Ministries is, you know, the way it does its things. And a lot of things that would come to our capital district for votes and laws really weren't part of who we were. And I wondered if that conversation is going on anywhere in the presbytery.
Yes, I've met with the director of Rural Migrant Ministries, this is Shannon, a couple times, and he reports to me that the majority of the migrant workers that they work with, and they do lots of work with the migrant workers around healthcare needs, organizing, education. They do programming for women and for children. Many of those are more down where we would consider Hudson Presbytery to be, and parts of the eastern ends of Susquehanna Valley Presbytery. There are parts out in Fulton, Montgomery counties in the western part of our presbytery where they have presence and are working, and they are beginning to be interested in Washington County at this time. So there are pieces of our presbytery where they are working, and certainly a little bit maybe to the south in Columbia County. But it is their strongest base is closer into where Hudson River Presbytery is, but they are engaged in some portions of our presbytery, but it may not be very visible yet. And making it visible is something that we're hearing about. All of our mission partners is making visible what that actual direct person or community is where the mission is taking place and who is benefiting from those mission dollars. That's very true. Does that help answer that?
My concern, yeah, I kind of, you know, have background in Rural Migrant Ministries, and they've had an intern, and we had them at our church, and we've had them at other churches around us, and we've had them out meeting with our farmers. What our experience has been, and was reported back even when Cass was here, was that most of our farmers found it not to connect with them at all, and actually how do I say it, a lot of what they're about was offensive to our local farmers and the people who donate to our ministries and are active in our ministries. And I think we need to learn more about that and address that if we're going to continue to support a ministry that many of our own local members are concerned with.
That's helpful to know that. That's helpful to know that.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. We could take one more quick question.
So Lois Hesberg is unmuted. Lois, you have the floor.
Thank you. Actually, I have a comment more than a question, but perhaps you'll turn it into a question. I believe our mission partners, whomever they might be, will be more determined by what we come up with as a mission statement rather than the reverse, or it should be. The focus should be on what do we hope to accomplish as a presbytery. That will naturally flow, I think, into what our mission should be.
Agreed.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to get to with, again, a mission statement that may have one part which is we can learn and memorize, or is a motto type of a piece, but then a longer statement that describes what we're about, and that would then help us with our decision making about a variety of things into the future, mission partners being one of them.
And then again, it goes back to that, that understanding of feeding seemed to be such a common theme. And
Yes.
so many of the missions of all of our congregations that, how does that fit into it then?
It also is sort of eye-opening that the landscape future priorities results used equip 3 times out of 5 and disciples once, and those were the very terms that we used in our original mission statements, the only mission statement we've ever had. So it seems as though we're actually hearkening back to, and there is productive thinking coming from that mission statement.
Great. Thank you, Lois.
Mm-hmm.
We are at the end of our time. It's just a few minutes after 1 o'clock. I wanted to thank everyone for being on the webinar. I know that it's short with just 1 hour. The purpose of these webinars is so that we will provide some early information before our Silver Bay retreat, which is the first weekend of June, and registration about that retreat went out via email last week with the e-news, and so I hope everyone will begin to register for Silver Bay. At Silver Bay, we will be having even greater conversations about these things, and all of the feedback that you've given us verbally, and that we will receive the written comments, which we haven't yet been able to see. Kim's over in another room in the building, but we will respond to those and comments that come into us over the next 48 hours, and we will continue the process of refining and doing work on this. I want to thank Jim and Michael and Linda for taking some time out of their busy days today to work with us, and everybody else who is also on the webinar today. You can send your feedback, questions that you have to Kim. Her email address is on the screen in front of you, communications@albanypresbytery.org. And as we have been doing with all of our work in the transition process, we've been making it transparent as we go through that. And so this webinar recording will be up on the transitional planning area of the website, and you'll be able to listen to it on demand whenever you would like to. And the written feedback and the comments we get over the next 48 hours, including our responses, will also be up as a document on that page. And on that transitional planning page of the Presbytery website, we've posted the documents that we've been working on and that have been guiding our conversations as we've done work over these last 18 months. Kim is going to say a little something as we finish up about our last 2 webinars that are coming up. We have 2 more, and thank you for being part of our first one. We were joking that we were a bit of the guinea pigs, and thank you for being patient with us and for participating. It's really a blessing to have all of you with us. Thank you.
So just to wrap up, I just want to say thank you again for everyone who's been participating. The good news is that we've had an unbelievable amount of feedback and participation being written to me online. I'm having a very difficult time keeping up, and that's a good problem to have. I'm so glad to see everyone engaged. We're not trying to keep anything a secret, however, so I will perhaps share with everyone the attendee list of people who were able to come today. You should also know that I had many people register for this webinar to be sure that they got the recording. So there are people who were not able to come at this time, but we're actively going to be following up with the recording as well. We have 2 more webinars coming up. The next one is next Tuesday, and we'll be talking about the staff structure and structure of Presbytery, and you can find, and then the one after that is talking about how we're investing in ministry going forward in our Presbytery. You can find information about that on our calendar page, either May 3rd or May 9th, and you can get registration links there. We've also sent out emails to you with registration links for these 2 upcoming webinars as well, and you will, of course, be hearing more from us about them. So I encourage you to please check your email or go online, register for them. All registrants will get the recorded webinar sent to them automatically. We thank you so much for your time today. I apologize to anyone that I was not able to get connected in personally, and we will continue to try to elicit your or incorporate any feedback that you have. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Bye now.